everyone and welcome to this October bullet journal plan with me video. I have never to this day made a real Halloween inspired theme in October, so I thought it was about time to fix that and create this theme with some spooky vibes, ink drawings, and very dark but neutral colors. But without further introductions, we're gonna start from the cover spread as usual, and we're first covering this whole spread with this yellowish old paper texture. You could definitely use any regular craft paper for the same purpose, but I was a little bit picky with the color, so I created this paper texture myself in Photoshop. I'll add this to the free section on my shop, so you can download this same thing and use it for your journals. I think textures like these are very useful for any vintage decorations or layering. But after this, we're gonna start sketching the first drawing of this setup, which is this dark, spooky mansion, and I used the house from the movie Psycho as my reference. There are a lot of pictures of that house on the internet, which makes it an easy reference to use, and we're gonna draw it with different size black pens. But before that step, I personally like to always start with a pencil sketch, which takes some pressure out of the ink pen part. I wanted the mansion drawing to cover pretty much this whole left page, and then we'll use the right side page for the bigger October monthly calendar. During the sketching phase, I think it's important to pay attention to the angles of the different parts of the mansion to get the overall perspective to stay consistent. If you don't have much experience with perspective drawing, I think using a picture of a real building can teach you a lot and will help you to pay attention to how the angles of the house change based on which side we are working on and how far we move from the eye level of the picture. But I didn't spend too much time on the sketching part in the video because you'll see me draw the same thing with more detail once we go over it with the black pens. And I started by going over all the main outlines with the thinner 01 pen. But other than just drawing the outlines, I was also trying to consider how I could leave some negative spaces in this drawing where the yellow background color shows instead of fully coloring everything black. So for example, I tried to do this around the corners, windows, and other details, even on the areas that will later be mainly in the shadow, because I think this will help to keep those details in the picture, even when we later add a lot of texture and darkness to this drawing. If you go over all the outlines and corners with only black, and later when I add shadows, all those details will kind of disappear if there isn't this small sliver of white in between. So that's why I think it's important to consider leaving those negative spaces in an all-over black drawing like this. But anyway, after the main outlines, I decided to color all the fully shadowy sides of the mansion so that we'll get a good reference point of how dark the rest of the picture should be. So basically all the left sides will have darker shadows, but I still left the windows white at this stage because I didn't really know what I wanted to do with them yet. And I was honestly really enjoying this whole drawing process. I feel like I've been painting a lot in the past few months and I was craving for some good old pen drawing that is more of a comfort zone for me. Painting while filming always gives me some pressure because I feel like with paints you can control the outcome a little bit less and it often doesn't really turn out how you imagine it in your mind. So yeah, I really enjoyed the less complicated decorations this month, and creating this theme also took me a little bit less time as well, even though you maybe wouldn't think so just after seeing the final result. But anyway, after we've marked the shadowy parts, I just started to add different line patterns to add texture to the rest of the mansion. I used these half circle scribbles for the roof to create some sort of panel appearance there, and then used some simple horizontal lines to create almost this wood panel appearance to the walls of the mansion. Whenever you want more shadows, you can easily just intensify the pattern a little bit and make the lines closer together, and then the opposite when you want an area to look lighter. Later, I also decided to draw pretty much the whole crown part black, apart from these stairs, because I felt like we needed that heavy dark contrast for the building, which was also pretty dark after all the texture and scribbles. But after we have pretty much the whole mansion ready, I took out a white pen that we'll use to add a large moon on the page and also redefine any parts of the house that maybe got too dark or just needed some highlights. I think this is a great advantage of working with brownish paper because both black and white shows against it, leaving a lot of opportunities for these interesting details. My white pen is maybe not the highest quality for this purpose, so I had to go over the lines a few times to keep them from fading. I also added these two black trees and later a few bats flying in the sky, which I think complemented the mansion and kind of added some filler to the empty parts of the page. But after adding any final details and edits to the drawing, we can then finally jump to the right page to quickly finish this cover spread with the October title and monthly calendar. I thought that this black paper went with the rest of the spread the best, though to be quite honest, black paper is not my favorite to write on, which is why I usually only try to use it for decorating. But then for the titles this month, I thought that this very simple all caps serif font suited these spooky drawings pretty well, so I just wrote October here while thickening the downstrokes of the letters a little bit. You could definitely use a ruler to help get very straight lines to your letters if you don't feel comfortable doing it freehand, but I was honestly too lazy to do that. The white pen I have smudges very easily, so I try to be very careful when drawing these lines to the calendar, but after all the numbers and weekdays were done, it finally finished this whole October cover spread. I really like how this turned out. I think it looks super cool somehow, and the yellowish paper in the background adds this vintage vibe to it that I really enjoy. But anyway, now it's time to move on, and next we'll set up an overall monthly planning spread. The decorations on this one will be quite quick and easy, so I thought we could start with them. So I wanted to create these black tree trunks and branches on this spread. Again, trying to create some spooky vibes without making the spread too scary or crazy either. So I started here with a thicker pen and went over all the outlines of the trees with it. I tried to be mindful of the branches and to leave some white spaces for them, but otherwise we're just gonna start drawing lots and lots of lines and scribbles on these trees to make them much darker. So I wanted them to look very sketchy and scribbly, and I covered both of them with these horizontal strokes that kind of worked as a good base layer and added some structure as well. I also tried to focus more of the shadows and scribbles on the left side so that there is clearly a shadow side to the trees, and then I drew the branches with a thinner pen to keep them a little bit more spiky. I tried to keep the strokes pretty fast and angular on the branches, which is something that often makes trees look more realistic in my opinion. I'm not saying that I did the best job here. I think the branches look maybe a little bit weird and unbalanced, but it was nothing that I would have wanted to fix. We're gonna draw some more trees to the right side, but let's first go over the whole rest of the spread. I used the same very basic font that we used on the cover spread and added a simple planning title at the bottom of this page, and then we are zooming out and actually creating one Dutch door here on the right side. I love these Dutch door pages, as you will definitely know if you've seen my other setup videos. I just think they offer so many options for fun and unique layouts, and also some extra spaces on a spread without needing to set up a completely new one. I totally understand how some people might think that it's a waste of the journal to cut out a part of a page, but you can always save all the extra pieces, and personally, at the end of the day, the reason I like to use a bullet journal is to be able to customize it however makes the most sense for me, and sometimes it means sacrificing a little for the sake of the decorations or time used to create these themes. But anyway, after that I added this black paper to the bottom, almost to act as a crown for these trees, because I felt like this page would have looked a little bit too light otherwise. And then I covered the whole first page of the Dutch door with this typewriter paper that matched pretty perfectly with the textured paper we are using in this theme. This typewriter paper is part of a paper kit in the new bookshop collection over on my shop, but you could definitely use a paper from an old book that you don't need anymore, maybe from a newspaper, or just maybe print out something along those lines from the internet. And any craft paper would of course work as well. But then when it comes to the actual journaling content on this spread, I'll use the left page to first list 3 of the most important things I want to get done in October. I also like to tie these things to an actual timeline, which is just a good extra step to make these goals more tangible. Then on the left page, I'll use these 2 boxes for the 4th quarter plan and then for a more specific October focus. I'm already starting to feel nervous about the Christmas and New Year season approaching. It's always the busiest time of the year for me and requires some extra planning and organizing my schedule and so on. But other than that, I actually wanted to keep this planning spread fairly simple because I will actually be gone for the whole beginning of October. Me and my husband are finally, almost 4 years after getting married, going for our honeymoon travel. We're going to Hawaii, which I'm beyond excited about. It's one of those places that's almost impossible to travel to from Finland, where I'm from. But now that I live in Japan, it's actually a very common holiday destination from here. Anyway, that means that I'll take some time off in October. It also means that my shop will be closed for a while in terms of all the physical items like stickers and washi tapes. There will be more information about the specific dates on the shop website itself, and I also write them on the screen for you. So if you want to get something from the new fall or bookshop collections, you still have some time to leave an order after this video goes live. But yeah, because of this, I wanted to use the whole inside of this Dutch store page for a travel diary, so I can save all those memories to my bullet journal forever. And if a travel diary is not something that you need personally, this could easily be transformed into a regular diary that you could try to keep for 1 month, even if you don't regularly use a diary. I think it's sometimes fun to try to record certain memories and just give the whole diary experience a go. Drawing these lines takes such a long time in real life, but I think the aesthetic is worth it. I think with the lines, it just looks more interesting than just leaving this whole space blank. But then as the final step of the whole planning section, we're drawing some more trees here around the travel diary area. I didn't try to be too careful with these trees and just really tried to darken and intensify certain places to make them stand out from the white of the spread itself. But that's finally all for the planning spread, and now let's move on to the next bigger section that will be for the weekly pages. We'll start here by preparing the overall layout. So we're going with another Dutch door and then create a bigger drawing on the last page. I also wanted to add some more of the yellowish paper to frame the Dutch door in the middle, and since I realized that the typewriter font was the same color as the other paper, I decided to use both of them. I wasn't really gonna do any extra decorations here on the left side except writing the week's title, so I thought that the typewriter effect added some visual interest. And then you'll notice that I left these tabs for the weeklies, which just adds something more interesting to this page again. I won't even set a weekly page for the first week that we are traveling. I just know I won't be using it for anything, so I only set up 3 weeks this time, but you could easily edit the amount of pages here for your own needs. I also cut out these black paper shapes to add to the tabs because I thought it made them stand out nicely. But now let's flip the notebook over and add this big week's title to the side. The typewriter thing is printed on Japanese washi paper, which is not the best paper to write on. It has some texture to it and the black ink pens kind of bleed on it slightly, so I was struggling with these letters a little bit. Luckily the background kind of hides it, so you can't really see it from afar. But anyway, after that, I just started to set up a very standard weekly page. I keep these roughly the same every month. I did try a different task approach in August, where I divided the tasks into morning, daytime, and evening tasks, but it didn't really work for me. I realized that I like to be able to move things around a lot, and in general, I only tend to write maybe 3 things to each day, which are usually work related. That's mostly what I use my bullet journal for, and if I have more work tasks in a day, realistically, they're probably not gonna get done. But then on the other side, I tried out something a little bit different. So instead of a weekly habit tracker, I thought I could try this weekly goals approach, which would combine habits and some things I want to get done at some point in the week. So I wrote some exercise goals here and some other things related to self-care, productivity, and hobbies. And when I get something done, I'll just color one square black. And if I want to do that activity more than once a week, I just added more squares for it. So yeah, I hope this makes sense. It's such a small difference, but I'm kind of excited to try it out. And then whenever there are extra space left, I usually use it for notes, which means that I can write anything here that doesn't really go anywhere else in my journal. I don't always end up using these spaces, but there are those few times when you need room for something and it's annoying if there is none. I'll probably do something very similar to the other weeks, so now it's finally time to flip to this yellow page at the end and start the bigger drawing for this section. I really got excited about the idea of drawing a skull. I've never drawn one before, and these dark, creepy style drawings are not really my usual style, but this actually turned out to be a very fun challenge, and I think the end result suited this theme perfectly. But anyway, you know by now that we're starting with a pencil sketch here as well, and after I had all the necessary details figured out, I took out the same black pens and started by going over all the main outlines for this picture. I challenged myself to only use the pens for this picture again, so we are doing all the shadowing with them as well, which required just tons and tons of strokes with different size pens. I tried to go for this method where I created a bunch of these diagonal strokes and then later did the same thing in the other direction to create this cross pattern. I'm sure there's like a real name for this style of shadowing, but you can see what I mean. Again, I intensified the pattern and added some extra lines whenever there was an area that needed deeper shadowing. But otherwise, this is just one of those pictures where you get really far if you can copy a random picture of a skull from the internet, and then we just replace regular shadows with the line pattern. At the end, a small addition I wanted to make to this picture were these flowers and leaves, because I thought it made this a little bit prettier and more interesting as well, I suppose. So I drew some white scribbly flowers. I didn't use any specific flower as a guide for these, so they were just very quick and kind of an afterthought to this whole picture. And then I thought the leaves needed some darkness and intensity as well, so that you could tell them apart from the background. But yeah, in the end, I'm very happy how this turned out and how it added this spooky accent to the whole weekly layout. And then something I forgot to do earlier was to fill this last page next to it. So I won't be needing this one page for the weeks anymore, which is why I decided to turn it into my knitting progress update section. I have many plans and projects in mind for this fall and winter, so I thought I could list some of those here as well. But anyway, after that we are done with the whole weekly section, and now we have one last spread to go through, and this will of course be for the monthly reflection. We're starting here with the title again, and on this spread I kind of wanted to go with similar tree decorations to tie things together with the planning spread a little bit, but I still wanted to do something different. So instead of those thin trees on the sides, we are gonna draw this one bigger tree in the middle and just balance all the journaling sections around it. Again, I added some black paper at the bottom edge, and then I chose to use the yellow paper on this spread as the boxes for the reflection questions. So in general, these pages are something I feel at the very end of the month. It's something I've done since the very beginning of my bullet journaling journey, and these just help me to review the past month. Answering these questions always forces me to sit down and really think about my goals and feelings for a while. It's helped me a lot to identify some recurring patterns and things I could improve, especially in my work life. But then when it comes to these last decorations here, I just started to color these dark branches with the black pens again. I tried to make the branches a little bit different on both sides so that it wouldn't turn out to be too symmetrical. And I also wanted the decorations to slightly overlap with the boxes to add this dimensional effect to the whole spread. Lastly, I also drew some Halloween pumpkins hanging from the trees and a few simple bats flying in the sky. But after all the final decorations were done, I quickly wrote out this scale thing where I reviewed the past month on all these different areas of my life from 1 to 10. It's something I try to include often on these reflection pages because I think it's fun to compare the results with past months. But after that, we are finally done with the whole October setup. I really hope you enjoyed this theme and got some new ideas from it, even if you are not the biggest fan of Halloween. I actually ended up liking this much more than I thought. And if this was your first time around here and you'd like to stay tuned for more, definitely consider subscribing. It would be highly appreciated. But I think that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having an amazing day or night wherever you are, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye bye!